After starting with, I guess, kind of like classic women's hairdressing, there was kind of like with barbering something that had always always captured my imagination. You know, like I'd always been more more comfortable in that barbershop environment. I guess my main inspiration was my grandfather. Like he was he was from the generation, like he served in the Navy in World War II. He was immaculately turned out all the time. And when when I started doing my apprenticeship, he was one of the first in the chain. He was very, very supportive. And at the time, this was in the late 90s when when men's hair was not what it is now. And yeah, he used to have classic razor fade, and it was just always with a side part. It was just he'd always brush it back with a comb and a gentleman's brush, and it was just theirs. And I remember that distinctly. Like it was just theirs every single morning. He would always do the same if he wasn't working. He used to do a lot of manual work, so he was either in a boiler suit or he was immaculate. It was just it was one of the two. And I think it was that aesthetic that just that really sparks my imagination. So even when I was doing my apprenticeship, when I was younger, it was always that that aesthetic that really inspired me, and it was just this. And then as I got older, and it was something that I adopted for myself, because it was just that, again, it was just at the time, guys were wearing either mohawks or they wanted to look like the Kings of Leon, or just these indie boy haircuts, and it was something I just wanted to stand out a little bit. So I guess I just started using referencing that, especially after he passed away. And then that became my whole aesthetic, and I think people started to like that. And then it went from there, and just started learning as much as I could about classic barbering, all the techniques, all the different shapes, all the different haircuts, and it went from there. So I guess I've been cutting hair for 16.5 years, and I guess barbering has really been a big part of that for probably about 7 or 8 years now, I think. Yeah, I've done a lot of work with guys before I opened my own shop. There were two guys that I used to work with who who were both classically trained barbers. So it's just I learned as much as I could from those guys. And then the rest of the time was just being just learning, meeting as many people as I could, speaking to people via social media, I guess, people that I was really impressed and inspired by, just learning as many techniques as possible, and then applying that to the classic training that I'd had through hairdressing, and then bringing it all together. I think what I specialise in is just the classic cuts. It's just I really like that. It's just and I'm constantly trying to add to my repertoire. It's just I'd love to do more Afro work. I really enjoy that. It's just a lot of the time I think it's just there is a slight divide between some of the black barbershops and the rest. It's just which is completely fair enough. It's just there's this completely different technique. It's just it's something I've got a few black clients I enjoy doing immensely, and it's something that I would love to add to, especially with working with some of the guys from the States, and just seeing some of the fade techniques that they use. I think it's incredible. It's really amazing to watch. But I think for me, just a lot of the work that I do on a daily basis is a lot of the classic gentleman's cuts, which I guess would range from the early 20th century to mid 20th century. I guess it's the early 1960s, before things changed and guys started wearing their hair a lot longer. Those cuts, especially cuts around the 1930s and the 1940s, just are really what I love to do. I think because that's what got me into it to start off with. So I mean everything from just the classic military style cuts, or there's I think 30s tight contour, where it's just where you carry a lot of length through the top, and it's either either has a slip, it's either slip back or from the side, and then taking it down as tight as the skin with a razor, and having that working through those such extreme lengths and still having a smooth blend and a really tight shape. I could cut those all day. Every time I cut one, I just want to stick it all back on and start again. There's with Harry Blades and Angry Daves, which is what it stands for. Okay. There's two different faces to it. There's the original shop, Harry Blades and Angry Daves, it's been open for 5.5 years. I guess kind of sort of we've found our niche through gentlemen's barbering. That's kind of, and a lot of the work that I've done through that. We do vary slightly in the sense that what we're trying to create now is just kind of is something that it's just kind of it can apply to both sexes, which is slightly controversial because there's to term it as kind of sort of as a barbershop is incorrect, because it's just there's it's not a kind of sort of it's not a solely male environment. We have girls working here, and we also have women that kind of sort of come in to have their hair cut. But what we can sort of try and translate, because a lot of women find kind of sort of the salon environment equally as frustrating as a lot of the guys do, is just the fact that kind of sort of with the barbershop, the guys have kind of sort of something for them, and I think with the whole renaissance of that, it's fantastic. So one of the things that we're trying to do in the same way as kind of going into a custom tattoo shop, that's the kind of work that we do, and there's a lot of women that are kind of sort of that are being inspired by what the guys have going on for them, and they're fed up with the campness and the kind of over opulence and kind of self-congratulating of hair salons. It's just kind of I despise hair salons, and a lot of women do as well. So we're trying to offer something that's kind of it's not a barbershop and it's not a salon. It's something in between. And then the other face of the kind of sort of the business is the Epically Sacred Barbershop, which is kind of sort of totally kind of focused on barbering. We've got two kind of sort of like amazing lads that are working there at the moment. And just I guess kind of that kind of came about because I wanted to I guess kind of sort of just reinforce kind of sort of my love of barbering. I guess it's just there's that kind of sort of that I think kind of sort of I guess kind of perhaps kind of sort of validates a lot of the work that I've done to kind of sort of to have a barbershop to kind of showcase exactly what kind of sort of I guess my respect for the industry and kind of sort of my respect for the history, as well as kind of sort of trying to develop something that's a little bit new at the same time. I met Paul Hewitt through Instagram, like kind of sort of, probably it's getting on for like almost 5 years, and we kind of sort of we had this I guess kind of lengthy conversations, and I don't think he would object to me saying it was a bit of a kind of online bromance that went on for about kind of sort of 6 months or so, and we had this idea that kind of sort of after we started talking, we had a lot of similar ideas, and and wanted to work together, and kind of, I think kind of sort of up to that point with kind of, sort of anything to do with the hair industry, whether it was salons or barbershops or whatever, it'd been very closed off. Like each shop was, it was very much kind of sort of very much for itself. It wasn't particularly open, and because we had kind of sort of like a lot of contacts within the tattoo industry, we were looking at that and just kind of I guess just kind of really inspired by that. It was just kind of the tattoo industry is kind of sort of totally flourished from people doing guest spots and moving around and kind of like and learning from each other, and that industry was very much the same as the hair industry in the past. Like 10 years ago, it wasn't really happening so much. So as soon as that did happen, it was just kind of like people were sharing techniques instead of kind of people losing out on kind of sort of on business to each other. What actually happened is they would then kind of sort of their businesses then became stronger because it was a sharing of knowledge, and that's exactly what Paul and I kind of sort of set out to do. So we started off kind of sort of by doing that together, kind of like for the first time when we did the Brighton Tattoo Convention 4 years ago. And I don't think either of us really kind of sort of really knew what we were walking into. Like it was just kind of like, it was very, very innocent. And then I think as soon as people, when we did that, it was at the turning point where kind of sort of like people kind of sort of, there's kind of sort of like young men and older men were kind of sort of like really looking towards this kind of style change. I guess they kind of sort of become really fed up with kind of sort of with what was being offered. And there was a few shops like Paul's and like mine and like a lot of others that were kind of sort of really starting to cater for that. And I guess when we did it, like we never did it publicly to draw attention to ourselves. It was just kind of like, it was in order to just kind of showcase kind of sort of something that we loved. Like the haircuts were always kind of sort of like right at the centre of it. Yeah, I think there's with the haircuts being at the centre of it, there was kind of people just just really seemed to appreciate what we were doing, and then over time it's kind of like it's built up. We've had more people that have kind of been added to the team, and we've kind of sort of been able to travel. I mean, it's been incredible, you know, like there's from going to like really kind of sort of, you know, like, I don't know, maybe like 7 or 8 years ago, really picking for scraps and reading like old kind of sort of old barbering manuals from like the 1940s and the 1950s, you know, like kind of sort of just finding these on the internet and really picking through for kind of sort of like for as much information as kind of like as I could get and just sort of as we could get. All of a sudden we were then kind of then in an environment where it was just we were just feeding off of everything, and it was incredible. And it was just and I think by kind of sort of because we have been kind of sort of travelling in the way that we've been kind of sort of showcasing it, I guess that's how the Barberlife was born, you know, like it was just kind of sort of because people were looking at the lifestyle that was attached to it, and the fact that that's very much kind of sort of like a part of who we are, you know, like we're very kind of sort of everybody that's been involved with that are very different characters. We all have a lot in common as well, just kind of, I mean, obviously with kind of sort of with cutting hair, but there's kind of sort of, even though there's common interests and there's different interests as well, I think that's all being kind of sort of like different facets of the kind of sort of the lifestyle that's really kind of sort of really sparked people's imagination. And it's been incredible to kind of sort of to witness how that's kind of spread, because it's just there's like everybody, you know, when the events are finished and the bags are packed, it's just everyone goes back to their shops, you know, like the shops are kind of sort of, you know, like a kind of sort of like relatively humble kind of sort of little stores that kind of sort of that represent the community that they're born out of. So it's just so for everyone to kind of sort of come out of that, and then that to be kind of sort of just more of a public showcase and to inspire people to kind of sort of either to come in and get a haircut or to be part of the barbering industry or anything like that. It's incredible. It's been a really good thing to witness. I think directly no, like it's just kind of I think with tattooing now it's kind of sort of like it's obviously become it's an integral part of kind of fashion or whatever. Like it's just I think historically, like there's kind of sort of there's amazing pictures that you can see kind of sort of from the States or kind of like port cities like I don't know, like kind of sort of like Hamburg or Amsterdam or kind of like Rotterdam, places like that, where there would have been kind of sort of there would have been barbershops where they would be doing like haircuts and shaves and tattoos as well, like specifically in port cities where it's just kind of like where the sailors are coming in. There's some fantastic, in Bristol as well, you know, there's a lot of there's a lot of fantastic imagery that just kind of where you can see that as part of the history, because it wasn't very I think there were certain shops kind of sort of back then where they were dealing for kind of sort of for that kind of clientele, and I think that kind of sort of that imagery is obviously kind of sort of sparked people's imaginations. I think that the passion behind kind of sort of behind barbering as well, like it's just there's all kind of sort of cutting hair of any kind, it just kind of sort of makes people I think kind of sort of people do want to wear it on their sleeve. I mean, I most definitely do. I mean, I have no idea how many razors and scissors I have tattooed. I mean, it's a lot. Like it's just kind of there's, you know, like various kind of forms, or like various artists have kind of, you know, like kind of approached me or done designs kind of sort of for me or whatever that, you know, like that I've wanted to kind of sort of to have on there. And I think also it's just there's, you know, like a lot of people kind of sort of when they see how tattooed it's just kind of like I am, and I'm compared to kind of like some of the guys that I work with, I'm not tattooed at all. But I think one of the things that's always quite funny is when people kind of ask me, oh, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do for a job? Like, you're covered in tattoos. I'm like, dude, I own my own shop. I have my own business. Like it's just there's, you know, like part of my business is the fact that it's kind of sort of, you know, it's a creative industry. Like it's just I decided that it's just kind of sort of that I wanted to look like this. This is what I found inspirational as a young man. So I set out to kind of sort of create that kind of freedom for myself. And I think that that's why a lot of barbers and kind of sort of like another creative professionals are kind of leaning towards that now, because they're like, dude, I make my own decisions. You know, like if I want to kind of sort of, if I want to put a tattoo on my head or my face or my hands or my neck or whatever, it's just I can do that because people respect me for what I do, and they understand that it's just kind of that I'm not a thug, I'm not a hooligan or a criminal. It's just kind of like this is part of the way that I express myself, and I think that that's kind of sort of that's very much become kind of sort of like an integral part of the scene, because it's an extension of it. It's a freedom of expression, I think. There's kind of sort of I've been running kind of sort of like a full set of American clinics for at least 4 years. Like I think as soon as I really started getting into the details of kind of sort of techniques and the things that I wanted to do, and the techniques that I wanted to use, and especially when I was speaking to kind of sort of like a lot of guys in the States and getting advice and just trying to learn as much as I could. The one thing that became apparent very, very quickly is just it's not difficult to recognise the selection in the UK is appalling, and it's just kind of like, and the quality of the kind of sort of like of the clippers comparatively to kind of sort of to the United States is completely different. Like I remember when I went into a kind of sort of like a wholesalers in the States for the first time, and instead of seeing like a choice of like 2 or 3 clippers, there was a wall. Like it was like going into Toys R Us. Like it was just kind of like just walk down and there was just all these different clippers, and whether it was kind of an electromagnetic motor or a pivot motor or a rotary motor or all the different types of liners and the different types of blades, and it was just, and the choice was vast. And the kind of like, and the problem that kind of sort of hit instantly was just there was some like the rotary and the pivot motors could cope with a kind of sort of a basic converter, but then some of the equipment I really wanted to use, like especially with like the Andis T outliners and my preferred liners, I think they're incredible. They're kind of sort of like one of the best things that I own, and because they're electromagnetic, it couldn't cope with the frequency. So I had these clippers that were amazing, and I knew how amazing they were, and I couldn't use them because it was just because the noise was unbearable. Like there's no way that you can be kind of sort of working around kind of like a gentleman's ears with kind of sort of that kind of racket going on in their ears. It was appalling. So the kind of sort of like the quality and the choice that kind of sort of like that was available in the States was kind of like was what kind of sort of is what made me kind of sort of want to use them. You know, I think kind of sort of people are very, very quick to, you know, there's the old expression of kind of a bad tradesman always blames his tools, and it's because a bad tradesman buys shit tools, and it's just kind of like, and I want to do the best job that I can, so I want the best tools that are available. It was the noise, like it was just there's kind of like I used the kind of sort of the Oster 76s and the fast feeds. Kind of so there's nice still kind of sort of they're kind of sort of the fast feeds especially is still one of my favourite clippers. I love them, and there was kind of like, and they worked with the converter, but it was just kind of, but I was also aware of the fact that they were kind of sort of, they were running a little bit slow, and it wasn't kind of it wasn't, they weren't working to kind of sort of to the optimum that they could be. And yeah, just kind of there were things like the kind of like the Andis Masters and kind of like the T outliners and stuff that I wanted to use, and the problem was the frequency. It was just kind of like I couldn't cope with the wattage, so it was just so definitely something needed to be done about that. The converter, I mean, I think the converter was literally like all of my Christmases came at once. Like it was just, there's like, I mean, I'd had kind of sort of like, it was a constant source of frustration, you know, like having clippers that I bought in the States just sat in their boxes, like in my toolbox, and I was like, I know that my haircuts can be better. I know that it's just kind of with the equipment that I have, it's just kind of like, and that I have available, it's just kind of sort of like my work can just, I can push the standards, but I can't use them. And it was the most frustrating thing. Like it was just like at one point, like there was one drawer that I wouldn't even open because I was like, I know that they're in there and I'm not looking at them because it was just because it's just a source of frustration. So when the 60 hertz converter came through, and it just says, and I became aware of it for the first time, like I was all over it. Like it was just it was as important as electricity being kind of sort of invented for me. Like it was just kind of like the difference between kind of sort of going from kind of sort of struggling with converters or clippers that were available in the UK was as revolutionary as kind of sort of like, you know, like the barbers 100 years ago, kind of sort of going from hand clippers to kind of sort of to electric motors. It was that revolutionary for me, and it was just there. So having that to kind of sort of to use all the tools that I wanted to is just kind of, there's like, I can feel, you know, like even after the kind of, sort of the length of time that I've been cutting hair, it's just I'm constantly trying to push, just like work on little details, like kind of sort of figure out kind of sort of new techniques. And now that I have kind of sort of this whole kind of array of tools to do that, like it's just, I'm probably the happiest I've been in my work for a very, very long time. Buy it. Just buy it. Like it's just kind of sort of, I couldn't recommend it highly enough. It's just kind of sort of, there's having kind of sort of having the kind of sort of the option of having kind of sort of adding kind of all these tools, and there's loads that kind of, you know, some people prefer kind of sort of like the Andis Masters over the fast feeds or the Wild Seniors, or kind of sort of there's, you know, the Wild Heroes or the T outliners, or there's kind of, I mean, there's so many. There's kind of like there's so many that you can use, which is down to the barber's personal choice. But at the heart of it is the converter, and the converter gives you the ability to kind of sort of to try new tools, which kind of gives you the ability to kind of sort of to learn new methods and learn new techniques, and that's kind of sort of, and that's at the heart of it. You know, like it's there's for people that really care about their work, and just kind of like, and just making sure that the kind of sort of the finish is as good as it possibly can be for me. Like, it's just like, as well as learning the techniques, it's just kind of sort of, there's the tools are at the heart of that. The tools are your everyday, like they're your bread and butter. It's just kind of like, you need them. So it's just, there's to use something like the converter, where it gives me the option of kind of sort of like of using all these tools and really kind of sort of honing my craft. It's a no-brainer. It's just kind of like, you use something that's standard and kind of sort of that's kind of sort of available everywhere and is substandard in my view, or it's just kind of, or you buy the best tools that you can to get the best finish that you can that you possibly can on every haircut, and without the converter you can't do